Hey everyone, my name's Rob. I'm one of the designers on Legends Reborn. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through one of the decks we have for the alpha coming up. This time we're going to be going through the Buff and Tough deck. This deck is based around passives that trigger automatically based on the order that you deploy your creatures. For this one, we went ahead and chose the Cleric hero, one of the more jack of all trade heroes, but some very valuable attack spike or attack increasing cards, just complemented by a very deep stack of shield, which will keep one particular creature alive a little longer, as well as regen and immunity, which will increase your health as well as make you immune to status effects that you don't want, and cleanse, which will remove status effects that you don't want. So the first creature in this deck is a very cool and quirky creature that is probably one of my favorite in this alpha. I'm going to go over its stats particularly because they are weird and it's a cool mechanic. You'll notice immediately the Cragshell Tortoise has 4 hit points. This is not a typo or an error. You will also notice that it has 100% defense and res. The reason for this is because every time the tortoise is attacked, it mitigates all of the damage down to the absolute minimum, which is 1 damage. Meaning that no matter how hard you hit the tortoise, you have to hit it 4 times to remove it, making it an absolutely incredible early game tank. It is, with this deck, always the first creature I put out. The only effective way to remove this tortoise really quickly as an opponent is to manipulate either the defense or resistance just enough to where it is no longer mitigating 100% of the damage, and then almost anything will kill it. Another good reason to put it out first in this deck is because this creature grants Thorns for 3 turns to any creature deployed after it. You'll notice Thorns is going to be a very important concept going forward with this deck. And I'll jump ahead a little bit just to show you why. Has another source of area Thorns, as well as a source of Thorns that also triggers an attack. A source of defense, which really shouldn't be used on this creature in particular. You want to use this on one of your other creatures. But it is a very cheap source, and it comes from this tortoise. Also another cheap attack, as well as an ignore defense, which consequently is one of the things that you should be worried about with this tortoise. You don't want someone using something like this on you. I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to the end of the creature list just to show you why Thorns is so important. We've got the Razorvine Int. Razorvine Int, the passive ability here is when you play Thorns on any friendly creature, you grant regen for 1 turn and immediately heal 10% of that creature's HP. Meaning that now Thorns is not only this great damage reflecting buff, it is also effectively a heal and a heal over time. So you'll notice there's a lot of Thorns in this deck. This is one of those passives. If you put the Tortoise out and then the Ent, basically every creature you put out from that point forward in that order immediately gains Thorns, immediately gains a regen, and is immediately healed. So once again, the key factor in this deck is the order in which you put the creatures out. The Ent itself is a relatively decent tank, has a deep hit point pool. We've given it a big source of attack here. A very good source of bravery, which is a very cheap, you gain 1 turn of bravery for each creature that you personally have on the board, which means that you can direct early game a lot of stuff into the tortoise, where you can just kind of bank on the fact that the opponent isn't going to be able to attack 4 times in 1 turn with low energy, or into this Int itself, which has a very deep hit point pool. You've got another source of Thorns, another source of Thorns that has an attack, and then just to round things off, Parasitic Armor, which is just a status effect you put on your creatures that will poison attackers. One of the other options you can do for mixing and matching which creatures go out first, this is the Moralkin Spore Cleric. When this creature's on the board, you get a defense and resistance boost for 3 turns to any creatures deployed after it. So you might want to put this out before a big tank creature, because that further boosts its survivability. Other than that, the Spore Cleric's main purpose in this deck is to be a good source of survivability. So it has regen, it has shields, it has a cleanse that is very cheap, it has a magic attack card, which is good for the Spore Cleric because it is slightly better at magic attack, but it's also better for some of the later creatures, as well as a relatively cheap heal. Next up is going to be your main physical attacker in this deck, which is going to be the Bright Scourge Phoenix. The Bright Scourge Phoenix, when you bring this creature out, its passive will take any creature that's currently below half hit points and put a buff on it that will automatically revive it if it's killed. So you don't want to necessarily lead with the Phoenix. You want to kind of push your luck and wait until as many of your creatures are below 50%, bring out the Phoenix, which will immediately give them all a second shot, as well as your Phoenix is going to be your main attacker here, so you can start doing work. We've got a very cost-effective attack card here, depending on whether or not your opponent's running debuffs or not. We've got Flame Armor, just to let you further put some buffs out on your creatures that will punish people for attacking them. We've got a Adrenaline source that triggers an attack. This is important because despite the Phoenix having a very good attack, it is a relatively expensive attack, so Adrenaline is always welcome on the Phoenix itself. And then you have another source of attack that also inflicts burn, which is the same debuff that people get for attacking you with Flame Armor. And then a more expensive, but just a more consistent, because the Phoenix's passive only goes off when it is deployed. Past that point, if you want to try another shot at the auto revive buff, you need to pay for it with the Phoenix's Spirit of the Phoenix cards, which grants auto revive. Last but not least, we have the Wreckdiver Hippocamp, who is a magic attacker, but who specializes in giving you enough energy. You probably, once again, want to put this one out relatively early, or at least before you start knocking down multiple opponents, because every time you defeat an opponent's creature, you gain 10 energy in return, so long as the Hippocamp is out. Because it's a magic attacker, there's 2 very good sources of magical attack. Another source of passive armor. Another source of adrenaline, which is very good to put on the Phoenix to reduce the cost of its relatively costly but impactful attacks. And then just in case the Spore Cleric goes down, you have 1 additional source of heal. All right. And that has been the Buff and Tough deck. Thanks, guys.